Right, Dean.
Hello. Sorry about the delay. My internet decided to not behave. So let me just adjust something here. Look at the right background.
Hi, Alistair. Last time I, sorry. Last time I see you is like in the Map AI, the sales team. For the team presentation, they do something like to advertise the Map AI. It's like jumping out. How's your experience there or here?
Yeah, different, but all really positive, and yeah, really hopefully, yeah, one that starts to grow quite significantly. That whole geo AI space is absolutely fascinating. One that's gonna change the face of our industry, I think, in some extent, whether it's now or sometime in the future. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's like very interesting change.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, I do agree, and it's going to be an interesting time. So thank you everyone for joining today's episode of Points, Lines and Polygons with our guest Alistair Towers, who's now at Ventia. So for those who haven't been on an episode before, if you can just mute yourself during the main part, but if you have any questions, then just put them in the chat and we'll have a session at the end to ask any questions if Alistair is open to answering any questions. So the format for Points, Lines and Polygons, it's pretty simple. It's just a general conversation with our guest and on their career, how they got to where they are, and any sort of insights into the future. So welcome, Alistair. Thank you for being our guest today. And yeah, so I'd be more than happy for you to go back really as far as you want, and how you got into the spatial industry, and tell us a bit about those early days, and then we'll work our way forward to today.
Yeah, thanks, Dean, for the intro, and great to see some faces that I know from times and roles in the past, specifically Lockie, Eve. Great to see you all again. I guess at the end of the day, my why, Dean, is I've always been interested in why people make certain decisions, where they choose to live, where they shop, where we come together to meet with other people. Those things have always been really interesting to me, and I was fortunate enough when I was at school. I had a teacher, a geography teacher, Mr. Tucker, who was able to describe in a lots of really good ways how geography really influences and impacts lots of those decisions. You think about Tobler's first law of geography, where things that are closer together are more likely to be related than things that are far apart. He was able to kind of instill a real interest in some of distilling and understanding how lots of subjects are driven by geography. And I found that really fascinating. I liked that. I then was fortunate enough I think we had I grew up in a very small part of rural Scotland. We had a very small senior geography class. Would have probably been about 6 or 7 of us that studied geography. 4 or 5 of us then went on to study that at tertiary education. then three of those who went into that then went on to do geographical information systems as a further master's degree. And this is back in the early 90s when I guess when a master's degree was quite in GIS was quite an unusual discipline. I think in the UK there was UCL, Leicester, and Edinburgh, I think, were the only three institutions that were providing master's degrees. I went straight from an undergraduate into that master's degree, and we had people who were on the course from Canada, from Indonesia, from Brazil, which spoke to, I guess, the attraction of studying the subject of GIS, and it was really foundational in terms of it covered programming, it covered database administration, it covered the technology at the time, which back then was I guess Unix systems and quite large ARC info before it kind of spawned into desktop, and then that evolved from ARC products through into ArcGIS and ArcMap and so on and so forth. But I guess the element of being able to distill what was really interesting in terms of why people make decisions always stayed true to that view of understanding demographics, understanding geography, understanding where those interplays of people making decisions on where they live and where they buy a house and what they are they rational in their behaviors was always really interesting to me, and that's I guess stuck with me as something that I've always found really interesting. Where I live right now in eastern suburbs of Melbourne, there are lots of people who are health specialists, and if you think about that, the reason that they're there is because they're equidistant from lots of other hospitals that are in your area, and kind of digging down into that level of the why is always really interesting for me. So yeah, really looking forward to the census coming out next, which is 11th of August.
Yep.
So please fill in your census forms when you get a chance. But yeah, being able to understand demographics and understanding the movement of and patterns of people is something I find fascinating, Dean.
And it isn't it? Yeah, and it's interesting that's what holds the whole GIS or spatial information industry together. But a lot of people don't necessarily come to it from that angle. They'll come to it from an environmental angle, or I started as a cartographer, which is obviously you're then mapping the that geographic relationship. But it is quite interesting the way that different people will come into GIS in a different way, or into spatial in a different way, but it really, your underlying passion there is the crux of it. It's that location, and it's for that relationship, and it's how things interrelate, in so many different industries, whether that, you sort of mentioned, with the demographic sort of things, it's whether, from a mining and a resource or a transport, or, all those sorts of things have that interrelationship, and it's it's what's behind spatial information at a general level. So
yeah, and I think, Dean, if you be able to talk to this much more learnedly than I can, but there seems like there's sort of three traditional employment paths in geospatial. You either work in one of the three tiers of government, they have their own requirements and governance and structure, or potentially in a path that encompasses the primary industries, whether that's mining or extractive industries. And then you've got the sort of AEC or consulting services. Those for me were always an area that I was most interested in. I started my career in kind of academia in the UK, and I worked for the university for 6 years before migrating across here. And I really wanted to test myself almost in a consulting environment, just to see. It felt like where the rubber hit the road. It felt like where people would use geographical information systems and the data that exists in there to make decisions about investing in property or building a shopping center or actually spending money. And when the rubber hits the road is where people have to spend money, whether it's your own money or institutional money. But that's the real kind of part of where, where decisions are made. You want to be right at that nexus of where decisions are made. And I always found that really exciting to be part of that.
And so what prompted the move to Australia?
I think the understanding again why we make certain decisions. I'd taken a year off after I graduated, a few years after I graduated, saved up enough pennies to be able to afford to take a year out and to travel around the world. And the reason I principally did that was because I kind of had the feeling that there had to be better places than Scotland to live. not because Scotland was bad, but just because there is a whole world out there for other places that you could potentially live. And it was really interesting to see, okay, well, what about me? What about my values, my passions, my interests? Where would I like to live if I had the choice of being able to go anywhere? And we're pretty fortunate that the commercial tools that we use in our industry are pretty ubiquitous around the world. You can learn the commercial off-the-shelf tooling, and you can work in South America, you can work in Canada, you can work in India, you could work lots of different places. So I felt like it was an opportunity to kind of like, okay, well, let's go out, scan the world, find out where we'd like to go that meets my criteria, my values, my passions. And I went to lots of different places, and I kind of came home with a view that okay, well, I actually can't speak other languages other than English fluently, so it's going to have to be an English-speaking country. I'd probably like to be able to live in a country where I can have a standard of life. I'd like to be able to have access to a safe place to live and raise a family, and so ended up like the short list becomes quite short quite quickly. And Australia was fantastic as a place for me. It felt really like a good place to settle and to bring up my family. And I've never looked back. I've never ever regretted that decision, Dean. I've been very, very fortunate in the opportunities that I've had here. And those opportunities cover a real range of different experiences, going from working in a small kind of aerial imagery company to start with, to then working in a business development environment for Esri Australia as the vendor of the Esri tool sets, to then working for Coles as a property developing organization or arm inside Coles. And then where I've spent, I guess, the bulk of my career was in that consulting space, working for Urbis as a property consultant organization. I supported a really significant period in their growth and their development, and that's where I've been fortunate to work with some fantastic other people across the geospatial ecosystem, and yeah, really enjoyed that. And then moved into Map AI, which was a kind of a synthesis of geographical information and AI tools, and then trying to understand where that was going to go forward. And I was really off the view that AI was going to probably wash over the planning industry a lot faster than it has. It hasn't accelerated through the process of I guess the planning industry, which I thought was going to be pretty ripe for AI disruption, given that it works on a set of structured rules and rule sets and outcomes. But it'll come. And I think it'll come quite quickly across that part. I like it'll come across the cartography and geospatial tools. I've got some ideas and thoughts on that as well, Dean.
Yeah, no, I like what you said, and I've probably said it myself a number of times. When you were making that decision to come to Australia, that that when you learn, Esri or QGIS or just the concepts of GIS, you can take them anywhere. And yeah, I've been lucky enough to do the same in essence in reverse. I've worked in the US and over in East Timor was a great project, and the underlying technology was exactly the same, and it's just location and how you use the tools and how you can, and even if you're having to pick up a new tool, it's then just switching your mind and going, all right, what are the terminology changes, but the actual concepts are the same throughout. And the other really interesting thing I find about both your career journey and the uptake of spatial technology is that you've worked for different organizations. A lot of people wouldn't necessarily think that Coles have a location division, and yet, they're ripe for using GIS technologies because they have stores everywhere.
Yep.
Where are their customers coming from? You're not just going to put a Coles in the middle of nowhere. You're going to go, all right, is there the population that will warrant it? Is there the transport routes? Is there the if it's a growing area, are there areas that are going to grow? And I'm finding it more and more interesting, especially now that I put the recruitment hat back on, that those industries that we typical, like, yes, we've got those typical industry, the traditional industries continue to use GIS, as you said. There's the tiers of government, and then there's the sort of the primary industries type of things. But there's all those extra ones now. I helped a marketing company last year fill a GIS role, and like you said, Coles, and there was a vacancy just recently, which would have been almost exactly the same scenario, but it was for 7-Eleven. Them doing their location planning and.
Yeah. I mean, just to give you some metrics to kind of make it real, Dean. I mean, back in this is late 2000s, 2006 to 2008. Coles were opening 50 new supermarkets a year. That equates to close to one a week. You're obviously looking at sites that are going to be unsuccessful as part of that process as well. So you're effectively assessing tens of sites to be able to understand where you want to open your supermarket. And a full line supermarket, which is one that sort of sits at around 3,500 square meters or above, that's typically a full line supermarket. So it's got the full offer of all of the things that you would expect in a supermarket. That needs a primary catchment population of around about 15,000 people for it to be financially viable. So that might not exist in new communities straight away, but they'll have a ramp up rate and an expected series of local population that will exist in year 2, year 3, year 4, and you model that out on a 5-year horizon to be able to understand, what what the future population of an area will be. But to do that, you have to understand demographics, you have to understand patterns and trends, and human movement data is an area that I've spent quite a lot of time working with in my career, and found that was really interesting to be able to understand how much you can lean on that, how much emphasis you can put on certain data sets, and how much of them are authoritative and how much of them are indicative, and it's super interesting to understand some of those metrics and see what will fly and what's not going to fly from a commercial perspective.
And obviously then moving past that, you then, as you said, you went into Map AI, and which has come out of Frontier SI.
That's right.
And so I really like the way that governments have embraced the research side of the industry. So Frontier SI came out of the CRC for spatial information,
yes.
and that went for multiple years before the formation of and I think that level of government input, I think, helps support the industry, and obviously when you look at a lot of jobs in the industry are in those government levels, and or the commercial side of it is working for a government, in either fully or part of they're part of the chain or whatever. So it's good to see that those things can flow through, and also good to see that stuff like Map AI can then fall out of all of that research and development and all the effort that people put in.
Yeah, if you look at the last budget, Dean, the last federal budget, there was quite a strong emphasis on research, and financially supporting government research. I think technology, I mean, maybe it's my age and my grey hair, but technology is moving faster and faster and faster, and I gotta tip my hat to the government. They're saying, look, this is really important. We need to do research. We need to also do, and research is almost like the carrot, but they also need a stick as well. They need governance, and putting in things like safety institutes around AI, being able to start to take a more proactive stance around what we want frontier models to be able to do and not do. Those tool sets are incredibly powerful. It's the for those old enough to remember the kind of initial Google motto of "Do no evil." That's an interesting premise to think about. Because you can use AI tool sets for bad acting and good acting. So I think governance is an important element to consider in terms of how you look to define a society, which is I guess the part of the role of government to build to define a society that's equitable and positive in the way that it supports its citizens. AI is an incredible tool, but it has to be have some guardrails around how it's built.
And I also think part of those guardrails is that continual supporting of the industries that can use it. And so from our industry, you still need, you need good education coming through, so that the people using the AI models can then look at the results and go, yep, that's actually valid, or no, it's not, and this is how we need to improve it. Because for me, I think we're a long way from just being able to put data in and expect that the map or the report or the analysis is 100% correct. And I think you need that knowledge, from a human perspective, to be able to go all the parts along the chain. Is it doing the right thing? Is it then benefiting what we're trying to achieve? At the end of the day, you don't really want to see people losing their jobs, but if organizations are going to embrace AI, you need to then go, all right, well, reuse those people to be the overseer of it, rather than just replacing.
So I guess then the interesting evolution of that, Dean, is do we then, as cartographers, geospatial experts, move to become doers? We move away from being doers to being checkers. Do we then start to be the people who put through a prompt, get a response, and then actually determine that the response itself is appropriate for the task that we're looking to be able to achieve? And if that is the case, then how do we develop our early stage graduates in our industry? I'm getting to the the tail end of industry career, and I'm very, very fortunate in the opportunities and the skills and the people that I've had the chance to learn from. How do new graduates entering into the workforce, how do they get to move past the point where they can be confident in their skills and knowledge and experience such that they can be checkers and not doers? Because we have this disruption of tooling that's coming right now, and I haven't run a specific cartographic prompt for a little while, but I did about 6 months ago run one, and it was quite incredible, the capability that I was surprised at the response and how good the response was, the quality of the response. I mean, we still, you're a cartographer, you were saying, Dean, you would know that a map has to have a border, a title, a north arrow, a scale bar, a legend. These are critical things that it needs to have. But AI will learn, advance, improve, continuously improve, and it will get to a point where foundation models for geospatial will be able to answer questions that all we'll do is be checkers rather than doers.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. How do you go from your academic training, so essentially at ground zero? I'm not saying that you don't learn anything at uni, but I'm actually saying you learn a lot. But there is potentially that void from going from to being that QA QC data manager, understanding what's coming out, and I think there's a lot of hype around AI, but I think once organizations start to realize that if they adopt it too heavily, then they're going to create that artificial void, and so people won't have the skills to be able to then interpret whether this is good or bad. And so I do think that it'll become a tool for people to use along the path rather than replacing that. So it's certainly very topical.
And coming back to what I was talking about earlier on, and many people in this call will be well conversant and probably well beyond my current experience, but when the first generation of AI tools came out, they were reasonable. They were kind of like having I guess an intern or something to assist you. they've very, very quickly gone from being an intern to being a graduate to being almost like a subject matter expert. It's moved so quickly, but and a lot of that has been driven by, I guess, the move from AI tooling into, I guess, agentic AI tooling, where you can start to break tasks down into subtasks, and you can get it from being, I guess, a probabilistic outcome to a deterministic outcome, and you can have a much higher level of confidence in the answer that you get back from an agentic AI capability. So I've always been really interested in staying close to what that means, but I'm surprised because I did expect that certain disciplines, and you can see the ones that have been probably most disrupted most quickly. Software engineering, for example, it's a set of rules and tasks, and it's very, very good. And then you can take something like GitHub, which has got, you know, some of the world's best coding that sits in it, and train your model on that to be able to say, well, okay, learn from this. And it's almost like the humanities repository for coding. Equally, legals are starting to be disrupted, and the legal system, because you can create case law, but there is grey in some elements of the legal system. Where do we sit as a discipline in terms of geospatial? We're probably, you know, in terms of the global geospatial market, I think it's something like 30 odd billion in terms of its size and scale, but it's probably quite far down the rank in terms of AI disruption. And then you look at I guess where the frontier models are going to start to be able to bring in geospatial content in to be able to answer things clearly. There's you know, it's a big data set, but that doesn't mean to say you can't run embeddings and structure an AI world that models out what we know about our planet, and if not more than we know about our planet. So I guess trying to understand, well, where does this hit? where does the meteorite, as a T-Rex looking up at the meteorite, are we in the, you know, is it really close, or how close is that meteorite from us, Dean?
Yeah, and I think that's a terrific analogy. And so we probably looked at, you know, and we're trying gazing into the future a little bit there. So what do you do in your role now with Ventia? You know, moving, you know, back to present day.
Yeah. So at the moment, I work for Ventia. I moved over about 5 months ago, and it's looking after the geospatial team that manage defence estates. So Ventia are an essential infrastructure company. We have contracts for telecommunications, estate management, roads, and transport infrastructure. And it's an ASX listed business with about 35,000 employees. So a pretty significant size of organization. My role here is as a spatial systems architect to be able to start to structure the disparate data around the defence estate, to be able to bring that into a shape and structure that supports the rollout from a land management, asset and property management, so that we deliver services efficiently and effectively right across the bases that we support in WA, Victoria, and Tasmania. And my rules in terms of what I like to be able to structure and bring to these, I guess, new roles when I work in those, Dean, is a couple of things in terms of focusing on. If you've got repetitive tasks, focus on bringing in automation. If you're looking to be able to build skills and build a high-performing team, then you look to be able to recruit people that have got really good cultural fit with your organization. You can train for technical, but you have to recruit for cultural. And then I think for me, you have to leverage really, really broadly used commercial off-the-shelf software to be able to do the tasks that you need. Those are the sort of three principles that I like to kind of drive forward, kind of time after time after time, Dean.
Yeah, no, and there's a lot of that makes a lot of sense. And I never realised how big Ventia actually is, and it's one of those things that has surprised me as I've because I think this is episode 12 or 13 for points, lines, and polygons. Learning those parts of what different companies do, and how big they are, and how widespread they are, and it almost comes back to what I was saying before, is that, Ventia, it's a good example. Their core function isn't about spatial information, but it's a core part of all of that stuff. All the defense bases have a location. They have, so and you can then, plan and do all those sorts of things. So it is one of those, our industry is a core part of so many organizations as they grow, and it's a matter of, sometimes trying to get that across to management, how it can be integrated and how it can be used, and it's good to see that organizations of the size of Ventia are embracing it as they do. So
I think it's foundational, though, that it answers the where question. You've got the how and the what, but we're the where. Where are we cutting grass? Where are we looking after our building assets? Where are these spaces that we have that are currently vacant that could be used or utilised for an office or a change of transition into some other use case? Where is what GIS does. It's the glue that geography is the glue that brings all of these elements together, and it's so important because it gives you a very, very easy and efficient way to be able to convey through cartography what the story is, but also to actually answer the really important questions about your asset base and what is it, where are we spending our money, what's the capital works looking like for the next 12 months, which bases are we going to do remediation on from a fire management plan. Those are questions that the business needs to answer on behalf of its client, and so you need to have a geospatial system of record to do that, Dean.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And I think that might be a good sort of segue into opening it up to questions if you're open to answering them about yourself, about the career. So if people on the line, if you have a question, you can just take yourself off mute, or you can type it into the chat. If you've got any questions for Alistair, or even just in general, more than happy to field those for the next 5-10 minutes. Hi, Lachlan.
Hi, we'll let Melissa go first. I spend a lot of time talking to Alistair, so Melissa, please, all yours.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, how are you? I was just kind of wondering if you had any more to share about your experience moving between academia and the private sector, and sort of any tips on how you can sort of stay in that area that you can bridge both. Yeah.
I had to travel 15,000 kilometers to move from Scotland to. I'm not saying you have to emigrate to do that, but I did genuinely, I guess, in a really kind of simplistic way, I'd spent 6 years in academia in the UK, and almost got to the point where you're starting to feel like the leather patches starting to grow on the jacket on the edge of your body. You're starting to feel like you're part of the furniture, and you're kind of like, well, okay, how do I prove myself in the real world? And again, being able to make contacts and build a brand that is, I guess, personal brand now is so important. because people are changing jobs very, very frequently. They don't stay in a role for a long period of time. I think it's important to be cognizant of how much you're actively learning in your current role. And if the answer to that is, oh, I'm getting quite comfortable, then maybe it's time to have a look around and change. And how I made that transition, I genuinely did move countries to make that transition. But I think it's just being aware and being able to reflect back as to where you feel like you're growing, and if you feel like you're not growing enough, then being honest enough with yourself to, I guess, to have that conversation that perhaps it's an opportunity for you to look at changing roles. That's easy to say and harder to do, Melissa, but I think it's about asking yourself honestly and candidly how much you feel like you're continuing to learn where you are.
Great, thanks.
No worries.
Go for it, Lachlan.
Thank you. I'll try and make it quick. I know once again where I'm asking my question right at the end, but something I love about Alistair and that we've spoken many times about, it's just that admiration for technology and how things have changed over time. A lot of this discussion has been around the future about AI, but this is a question I've never actually asked you, Ali, and I would be, hopefully it's not putting you on the spot, but would be interested to hear that, reflecting on your career through the turn of the millennium and an increased digitization of data, you move through the 2010s, the advent of smartphones, tablets, moving into an era of big data, and now we've got intelligent thinking systems. For you in your career and through geospatial, was there any one singular point where you said everything is different? If it was, moving towards more digital systems, or when the data just got so much bigger, is there any one point as someone like yourself who loves technology where you really sort of realized, okay, this is it, it's happening now?
It's like the VCR moment for your parents, where they kind of hand the remote control to the kids and go, "I don't understand how to run this anymore." Well, look, great question, Lockie, and I think in some ways, I've surrounded myself with some people like yourself, your good self, who do work natively in, I guess, cloud. Cloud was a bit of a point where things moved across and it kind of went, oh, okay, yeah, that's interesting. This leverages now data lakes, data stores, different ways of storing data through things like cloud optimized geotiffs, or massive new formats for reaching into millions of rows and the ability to query and leverage lots and lots of data. But the foundational things are always kind of stay the same, but the technology just kind of opens the door for you to do, faster, bigger query. But you're really still interested in the same questions. Where are things? What are the things that we need to be able to do our business efficiently and effectively? So I guess my cheat to get around that was by, I guess, employing really knowledgeable people like you who were native in some of those spaces, and trying to just kind of through question and answers, working out how to be able to work out, okay, so this now means I can do this. We can query the entire census every 5 years dating back for the last 20 years now, and understand a longitudinal profile of a suburb. But we can do that really easily using Power BI and dashboards and maps and other tools to be able to do that. So kind of a cheat answer by just employing smart other people.
No, but I think that's actually a really good point, though, because that's where our universities really come into it, in that, when you've been in the industry for a while, your opportunities to learn get less and less as you're working, because it's your day-to-day stuff. You might do a course or you might whatever, but you want to then, you're hoping as you move your career, that the universities are keeping up with that technology and they're educating those people who can then come into your team to then educate the team, and in essence yourself. And I do agree with what you said, Alistair, in terms of that move to the cloud. The technology there is changing, so quickly that it's like try to just keep up with, what it means, the sheer size of, data centers and everything, it's a pretty amazing sort of technology. Eve, you've got your hand up?
Thank you. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yep, go for
Thank
it.
you, Ding, for letting me ask the last question. Hi, Alistair. Hope you're doing well. Haven't seen you for quite a while. We probably need another session for just catch up. I know I was there for the whole time and heard you mentioned a bit about AI. So instead of being the doer, and then maybe in the future we need to take the responsibility to check the outputs. I would ask what qualities to be a good checker. What do we need to do, and also what disciplines you have, like top 3 disciplines you think when we need to be applied when we adapt AI technology to GIS work.
Hi, Eve. Great question. How do we check? I think you check by being able to have that real world practical experience of and it's very hard to kind of replace that of working back from the audience of what you're trying to achieve, and then also the message that sits in the map. Because at the end of the day, right, this is something I've always been really passionate about. A map is an abstraction of the real world. The reason it's not at one-to-one scale is so that you have to leave some things out. So if you have to leave some things out of a map, you have to choose what you are going to put into the map. And what you choose to put in the map conveys the information that you're choosing to make as the message going forward. So, we've talked a lot, particularly when we were in Urbis, about certain maps that we were using to try to put, I guess, an influence or a positive outcome in terms of a property investment decision, or a new facility that was perhaps going to be located in a place, and we needed to understand what the demographics were, but we did it in a way that made it seem like it was perhaps by focusing in on a certain demographic or a certain data set, we were presenting a message. So being able to understand those nuances in the cartography that you present, and being able to then understand the audience, the message, and then how you can really cut through. Because when people are really clear with a message, it's really powerful. And a map is such a powerful vehicle for communicating information. It has a level of authority. People trust maps. Oh, it's on a map, it must be right. We sometimes take that for granted, but that is so true. And so we can use that authority and that message and that audience, and if we can align those together to get a really good sense of what we're attempting to deliver, and deliver that message really efficiently, then I think that's where we hit the mark, and we hit the mark really clearly when we can do that well. What was the second part of your question, Eve? Sorry, I'd forgotten.
Top 3 disciplines when we apply
Brilliant.
AI.
Yeah, I'd started writing some notes on that. Yes, you're great. Second part, I think the elements for me around being able to understand how to code. Now, if you think back to even 5 years ago, we had a team of application developers when we worked together, they were there, they were amazing, they were building applications for us that were really, really powerful. I can vibe code some of that now in a very, very short period of time, and I won't get to the level of complexity that those guys could build as software engineers, but I can get a proof of concept in that will actually allow me to demonstrate my thinking and my logic in that. So I think coding is a really important part to continue to understand coding, and then understanding, I guess, that human element, that empathy. That's something that AI can't particularly do very well right now, is to empathize with your clients, with your colleagues, to have a conversation with them, to be able to understand that. So you have to have that I guess that human capability to understand what people like, what people are prioritizing. So I think a skill of being able to still relate to people is super important. And it will be dialed up as AI starts to eat away at the operational elements of what we do. The ability for Eve Chen to be able to talk to her clients and to say, okay, I understand you, this is really important, this is what you want, and then to use the tools to be able to get to that point really quickly will mean that Eve is still super valuable in the role that you're in. So I think coding, empathy, and I think really just having I guess a broader brand and a structure of relationships in and around the geospatial industry. And bear in mind, it is a small industry, so you know we know lots of people through our professional and personal relationships. Just keep that, maintain that. I think that's really critical to do for success.
Thanks.
Thank you, Eve, for that question. That's a great question, and I think that's a great spot to finish up on in terms of, I think, that last point about maintaining those networks. You know, both within your organisation, within the industry. I think it's very important because different people are doing different things, but there might be someone out there who you can just reach out to and go, all right, what do you think of this? How can you do that? You know, and how to make it easier. So I think that's a great
and kudos to you, Dean, as well, for bringing together Spatial. That brings people in the industry together. That's a way of people connecting, of being able to feel like they're part of a community that has a group and a tribe and a focus. I think that's really, really important for us as geospatial professionals.
Yeah, and that is the crux of you know, both today and the sites and all that sort of stuff, is that maintaining of that network and community and reach out. You know, I think it's one of those industries which people are so willing to share. You know, people aren't trying to create their own empire. They're actually really willing to share, and that's a great thing, I think, about our industry. So I really want to thank you, Alistair, for your time today, and thank you for everyone who tuned in. It was a great turnout, great questions. Next week we're chatting with a surveyor who's a guy by name Nimilan, and it's more about his journey through his career from his home country back into Australia, and the struggles and the triumphs that he's had in that journey. So if you have time next week, please tune in. Otherwise, we will also record it for people to watch. But thank you, everyone. Thank you for sharing this time with us, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Great to see everyone.
Thanks. Good
Bye.
to see you. Bye.
Bye.